This is a little PSA for anyone new to production or new to the travel game when it comes to photo and video. And that's just never check a bag that you can't afford to lose. And there's a few reasons for that. It's almost like it should be common sense. At least that's how it feels to me after doing this for so long. And I'm sure there's quite a few out there that also feel the same way. It's just like, why would you ever check a bag, if it has something important that you actually need inside of it? But when it comes to production, especially when you're traveling, you're trying to figure out how you're going to make it all fit, what you're going to pay for, you can afford to pay for, how it's going to arrive at your final destination. And the simplest way to put it is don't check your cameras, don't check your memory cards or any media. If it is important, if it is critical, if it's vital to the shoot in order to function, keep it on you at all times. Backpack, roller bag, whatever you can take on the plane and you can hold on to and you never have to let go. You want that stuff like on you. If it's the most important, keep it with you all the time. What can you afford to check is maybe then the question, like, well, I need everything for my shoot. And if I'm checking some stuff, what qualifies? Well, I kind of already mentioned the stuff you want to keep with you. Cameras, lenses, batteries, memory cards, the stuff that's like the core. So if you're a photographer and you're taking photos, you need a camera. If you're shooting video, you need a camera and you need some kind of microphone. So keep all that stuff on you because then you'll never lose it unless you're neglectful and you lose it yourself, but it's never in someone else's custody. What do I check? I check lights, stands, tripods, big heavy stuff that is helpful. That is what I would consider essential to the shoot, but it's not critical. Could I make do without lights? Yeah, I technically could. It's not ideal, but I could. Could I make do without a tripod? Yeah, I could figure it out. You can always put a camera on a bookshelf, on a table. You can just hold it really still. If it's a Lumix camera and you got some good stabilization, maybe isn't even all that important anyway. But yes, I usually bring a tripod, but that's a checked bag item. Lights, stands, that sort of thing. Extension cords, HDMI cables, any of that stuff that's also pretty easy to buy locally or rent. Most places you can find a shop that'll rent you C-stands or light stands or tripods or even some kind of light. You can go to Home Depot and get some lights if you really need to. There's always that stuff that's available on site. HDMI cords are like that. The stuff that you can buy locally or rent locally is also perfect candidate to be checked. Now, 99% of the time you're going to be fine. It's going to get checked and it's going to show up at your destination and you're good to go. No problems, no issues. But that 1% of the time where a bag gets lost or more likely delayed, which is the bigger issue, especially if you have a connecting flight, that's a better sign that it's going to get lost or misplaced or delayed. So if you have a connecting flight, definitely be extra worried. And even on a direct flight, it can still be delayed. It didn't get put on the plane, whatever. The airlines are usually pretty good about tracking it down these days, but it might show up a day or two later, which if you're traveling, in for a particular shoot might be too late. So this seems like it should be common sense, but you do hear horror stories of people who are just now getting into the industry where they have big cameras, they have big stuff that they feel like they need to check. And then all of a sudden it gets lost, misplaced, delayed, and they're scrambling to figure it out. And you just absolutely don't want to do that, that's why, again, one of my many reasons why my preference is the hybrid cameras is because they're just a lot lighter, easier to travel with. They can go anywhere. You can do almost anything with them. They fit in a backpack under the seat. You have another set of lenses or additional cameras in a roller bag as a carry-on above you, and you'll be able to fly most places pretty hassle-free. The other thing you need to know about airlines is if you're checking a bag, make sure there's no batteries in there. That's a sure way to get the bag pulled for search, and that will definitely delay that item from arriving. So that used to happen in the past to me a few times where you'd think, oh, I've got these big batteries, like I should check them. I don't want them to go through the x-ray machine, through security. That's going to cause me problems. I'm going to check it. And that's actually wrong. You want to keep the batteries with you. Batteries going through TSA security is way better than checking them because guaranteed they're going to open up that case, and a lot of times that causes delays, especially if you're not like really early to the airport. If you got big bags that are extra large or overweight, they're definitely getting, pulled and getting special treatment. And I would say there's different ways to fly with the different airlines. My preference has always been Southwest because their media policy is actually pretty good. Still to this day, if you have media credentials, you can check 2 bags for free with Southwest because they let you do that. And with the media credentials, those bags can be up to 100 pounds. So instead of the 50-pound limit, you get all the way up to 100, which allows you to get a couple C stands, some tripods if you need. You can definitely check lights if you have something that's fairly well packed in like a good case, so it's going to be protected. Some of the airlines have different policies for media equipment. You just have to check with the airline, but historically I've always flown with Southwest, and there's some pros and cons to that. Everyone has their preference, but for me personally, Southwest, the media bag rate with those media credentials, getting the extra like up to 100 pounds. So that's 2 bags for free. There's like 200 pounds total that you can bring and not have to pay for as extra. That's a sweet deal. And that's per person. So if you have a couple people flying, you could theoretically get quite a bit of weight on a plane. Now, at a certain point, you can look into cargo policies if that's a consideration. If you have really big stuff that's really heavy, you might have to send it either freight or cargo. I forget which one they call it, but there's those options as well. Or you can look into shipping the gear ahead of time, which again, that's for very large productions. I think most people nowadays, if you're an independent kind of freelance contractor, whatever it might be, if it's you and maybe a handful of other people, you can usually get by with just traditional domestic flights, normal baggage policies. And if you look into getting some media credentials, making them for yourself or whoever you're working with, that could definitely help you out, avoid some of those extra fees so you're able to travel, depending, again, on the airline. So if you are going to check a bag, make sure it's the stuff that you can kind of work without or you can make do. Again, that's not ideal, but again, this is like a worst case scenario. It's not likely going to happen. Your bag should arrive. And if you can, and you manage to keep those bags underweight, that also helps out because then it just flies like normal luggage and you're all set. As technology has gotten better, it's been easier and easier to do that because stuff isn't as heavy as it used to be. It's not as big as it used to be. And it's also a consideration that stuff isn't as expensive as it used to be. So even if something were to be lost, cross your fingers that it doesn't happen. But if you were out that entire bag and you never saw the stuff again, hopefully you're not losing thousands of dollars in equipment. Maybe it's only hundreds. But again, that's going to depend on what you've got. But if it's expensive, if it's valuable, if it's priceless, meaning it's the actual footage from the shoot or something like that, it's something irreplaceable, keep that on you at all times. Don't check it. Just don't. Don't even roll those dice. If it's important, if it's valuable, keep it on you all the time, and you should be in a much better spot. And again, it's why I like the hybrid production. The batteries are smaller. The lenses tend to be smaller. The camera bodies are smaller. I know everyone is attracted to the, and it's all relative, right? Cameras used to be even larger, especially film cameras. Cinema cameras were quite a bit bigger. Now everything keeps shrinking, but there still is that kind of divide where if you're using like the Anton Bauer batteries or V-mount batteries, if stuff's just bigger, if you have more equipment, it's harder to fit in a backpack under your seat. So my preference for one of them, 99 reasons, and one of them is I can just take these cameras basically anywhere and do almost anything. And at the end of the day, the footage speaks for itself. So it really shouldn't matter what you're filming with. And that used to be more the case and was definitely a recommendation I made, where before TikTok really took off in popularity, before Instagram introduced Reels, before YouTube had Shorts, and before clients and companies even cared about that kind of social media, content marketing, video marketing, when they were thinking more like traditional, we want video production. Yeah, get a matte box, get a follow focus, build out the camera, make it look more impressive. But nowadays, I think more and more people are becoming more and more comfortable with even iPhone production, Android phone production, just seeing someone holding a phone vertical, like, oh, I'm shooting a TikTok. Well, you can do the same thing or slightly better quality, of course, far more control if you have a hybrid style rig. And I think that's becoming more accepted. I think it's just, as the younger people are getting older, it just makes more sense. People understand now that YouTube is a thing, and it really depends on the project. If you want to make someone feel comfortable, like you're a real professional, you can get a matte box and rig it out and make it look all cool with all your cheese plates and grip gear. But Usually a lot of that stuff kind of gets in the way and just causes more friction, especially when you're flying compared to, a camera that looks like you're doing photography, taking pictures, and maybe you have an LCD monitor, and a few other bells and whistles, but you don't need too much these days to make really good photo and video. So if you're going to fly, keep with you the priceless stuff, certainly, and check only what you can afford to lose. That should save you a lot of pain, suffering, save you the headache, save you the heartache, and hopefully help you out in the long run.